The metal corridors of the dragon hatchery gleamed under the pale moonlight filtering through crystal windows. 12-year-old Malik Washington pressed his back against the cold wall, his heart hammering so loud he was sure the guards would hear it. He had been planning this for weeks, watching the patrol patterns, memorizing every twist and turn of the royal complex. His little sister Keisha was dying. The crimson fever had taken hold 3 days ago, and the human doctors in their settlement had nothing left to try. But Malik had overheard the dragon healers talking. Dragon egg essence could cure anything. The problem was getting it. Dragons didn't share their treasures with humans. In their eyes, humans were barely worth noticing, just another species that had been conquered and relocated to work in their mines and factories. Most humans accepted this fate, but Malik never could. Not when his family was at stake. He slipped through the shadows, his bare feet silent on the polished floor. The hatchery door stood 20 feet away, guarded by a sleeping drake. Malik had brought a chunk of fermented meat from the settlement kitchens. Dragons loved the stuff, and it made them drowsy. He tossed it near the guard's snout and waited. The drake sniffed once, then gobbled up the treat and settled back into a deeper sleep. Malik smiled despite his terror. Sometimes being small and overlooked had its advantages. The hatchery chamber took his breath away. Dozens of eggs rested in crystal nests, each one glowing with an inner fire that painted the walls in shifting colors. Some were deep emerald green, others brilliant sapphire blue, and a few burned with golden light. The heat in the room made sweat bead on his forehead, but he pushed forward. His hands shook as he approached the nearest nest. The egg was warm to the touch, almost alive. He wrapped it carefully in the cloth he'd brought, then moved to another nest. 3 eggs, that should be enough to make the healing serum Keisha needed. The second egg was heavier than expected, and Malik struggled to fit it in his makeshift bag. The third one seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. As he lifted it, the egg suddenly flared brighter, and he nearly dropped it in surprise. That was when the lights blazed on. Well, what have we here? Malik spun around to find himself surrounded by 6 dragon guards in their humanoid forms, their scaled skin gleaming like armor. Their eyes glowed with barely contained fire, and plasma rifles hummed in their clawed hands. Behind them stood Captain Torres, the Queen's personal guard commander, his expression colder than space itself. A human thief, Torres said, stepping closer. In the sacred hatchery, no less. Do you have any idea what you've done, boy? Malik clutched the bag to his chest, his mind racing. He couldn't fight his way out, that was impossible. He couldn't run either, not with 6 armed guards blocking every exit. But he couldn't give up. Not when Keisha was counting on him. I need them, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My sister is dying. Torres laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your sister? Human child, do you think we care about one sick girl when you violated our most sacred laws? These eggs are worth more than your entire settlement. Please, Malik tried again, knowing it was hopeless but unable to stop himself. Just 1 egg. That's all I need. I'll work for you for free, forever. I'll do anything. You'll do nothing, Torres snapped. Because you'll be dead within the hour. Take him to the Queen. Let her decide how creative his execution should be. The guards moved forward, and Malik felt rough hands grab his arms. The bag was torn from his grip, and he watched helplessly as the precious eggs were placed back in their nests. All that planning, all that risk, and he had nothing to show for it except a death sentence. As they dragged him through the corridors, Malik thought about Keisha lying in their tiny room, her breathing getting weaker by the hour. She had smiled at him before he left, telling him everything would be okay. She believed in him completely, trusted him to find a way to save her. Now he had failed, and they would both die, him from dragon justice, and her from the fever he couldn't cure. The throne room doors loomed ahead, massive and carved with scenes of dragon victories over conquered worlds. Beyond those doors waited Queen Perithia, the ancient red dragon whose word was absolute law. No human had ever stood before her and lived to tell about it. Malik straightened his shoulders as the doors began to open. If he was going to die, he would face it with courage. At least Keisha would know he had tried everything. The throne room stretched out like a nightmare made real. Black stone walls rose higher than any building in the human settlement, covered in gold veins that pulsed with their own light. The ceiling disappeared into shadows, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with power. Malik's bare feet slapped against the polished floor as the guards forced him forward, each step echoing like thunder. At the far end of the vast chamber, Queen Perithia waited. She was enormous beyond anything Malik had imagined. Her red scales caught the light like molten metal, and her wings, folded against her sides, could have covered an entire city block. Her head alone was the size of a transport ship, and when she opened her eyes to look at him, Malik felt like he was staring into twin suns. So, her voice rumbled through the chamber, shaking dust from the ancient stones. This is the human child who dared to steal from me. Captain Torres shoved Malik to his knees. Your Majesty, we caught him in the hatchery with 3 eggs. He claims his sister is sick, but that hardly excuses. Silence. The single word from the Queen made Torres step back instantly. Her massive head lowered until she was eye level with Malik, just 20 feet away. He could feel the heat radiating from her nostrils with each breath. I will judge this matter myself. Malik tried to keep his hands from shaking. He had heard stories about Queen Perithia since he was small. She had ruled for over 1,000 years, conquering worlds and crushing rebellions without mercy. Humans whispered that she could read minds, that she could burn a person to ash with just a look, that she had never shown pity to anyone. Look at me, child, she commanded. Malik raised his eyes to meet hers, and suddenly the world exploded into fire and light. He felt something crash into his mind like a tidal wave, sweeping through his memories and thoughts. Every secret, every fear, every hope he had ever held was laid bare before the ancient dragon's gaze. She saw him as a little boy, watching his parents leave for the mines that final morning. She saw the cave-in that killed them both, felt his desperate grief as he held 5-year-old Keisha and promised her everything would be okay. She witnessed every hungry night when he gave his food to her, every time he stole medicine when she got sick, every moment he chose her life over his own safety. The Queen saw him 3 days ago, holding Keisha as the fever burned through her small body. She felt his helplessness as the human doctors shook their heads and said there was nothing more they could do. She experienced his rage at a universe that would take away the only family he had left, and his desperate determination to save her no matter the cost. Through it all, Malik never looked away. Even as the mental probe tore through his consciousness like claws, even as tears streamed down his face from the pain, he held the Queen's burning gaze. He had nothing left to hide anyway. After what felt like hours, the pressure in his mind suddenly lifted. Queen Perithia pulled back, her expression unreadable. Interesting, she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Very interesting indeed. Your Majesty? Torres ventured. Shall we prepare the execution chamber? The Queen ignored him, her attention focused entirely on Malik. Tell me, human child. What is your name? Malik Washington, Your Majesty. And your sister? Keisha. She's only 8. His voice broke slightly on her name. Queen Perithia was quiet for a long moment, her ancient eyes studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Around the throne room, her court of dragon nobles watched in confusion. This was taking far too long for a simple execution. In all my centuries, the Queen finally said, I have seen countless beings kneel before me. Warriors begging for their lives. Politicians offering bribes. Parents pleading for their children. But do you know what I saw in your mind, Malik Washington? He shook his head, not trusting his voice. No thought of yourself. Not once did you consider your own survival, your own pain, your own future. Every decision, every action, every breath you take is for that little girl. You would die 1,000 times over if it meant she could live. Her head tilted slightly. Tell me, what would you sacrifice to save her? Everything, Malik whispered without hesitation. My life, my freedom, my soul if I had to. She's all I have left. And if I told you that saving her would require you to spend the rest of your life serving dragons, never seeing your home again? I'd do it. Even if other humans called you a traitor? She's worth more than their opinions. Queen Perithia's lips curved into what might have been a smile, revealing teeth like ancient swords. Now that, she said softly, is exactly what I hoped you would say. The silence in the throne room stretched like a taut wire. Every dragon noble leaned forward, waiting for Queen Perithia to pronounce the death sentence they all expected. Malik knelt on the cold stone floor, his knees aching, but his eyes never left the ancient dragon's face. You may keep 1 egg, the Queen said quietly. The words hit the chamber like a lightning bolt. Lord Commander Thane, a massive silver dragon in his humanoid form, stepped forward so quickly his claws scraped against the stone. Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious. No human has ever. Are you questioning my judgment? Queen Perithia's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, and flames flickered between her teeth. Thane immediately backed down, but the shock on his face remained. Malik blinked, certain he had misunderstood. Your Majesty? You heard correctly, young human. 1 egg. But understand this is not a gift freely given. Her massive head lowered until her breath washed over him, hot as a forge. You will raise the hatchling according to our ancient ways. You will learn our customs, our language, our bond rituals. And you will prove that humans are worthy of such trust. I don't understand, Malik stammered. Why would you? Because in 1,000 years, you are the first being I have met who thinks of another before himself. Such loyalty is rarer than the most precious gems. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Do not mistake this for weakness, child. If you fail in this task, if you harm the hatchling or prove unworthy, I will personally ensure your death is neither quick nor painless. Malik's heart hammered against his ribs. This had to be a dream, some fever vision brought on by stress and fear. Dragons didn't help humans. They barely acknowledged humans existed. The bronze egg, Queen Perithia continued, gesturing with one massive claw toward a guard who had been waiting by the chamber entrance. It will hatch within the week. The essence you need for your sister can be extracted from the shell fragments after the birth. The guard approached carrying a cloth bundle, moving with obvious reluctance. When he placed it in Malik's trembling hands, the weight of it seemed to hold the future itself. Your Majesty, another noble protested, this one a green dragon with scars across her snout. The dragons will not accept this. A human raising one of our young? It violates every law we hold sacred. Then perhaps it is time our laws evolved, the Queen replied coolly. Or would you prefer to explain to me why they should not? The noble's mouth snapped shut so fast Malik heard her teeth click together. This audience is concluded, Queen Perithia announced. Guard Captain Torres will escort our young friend back to his settlement. And Torres? Yes, Your Majesty? See that word of this arrangement spread slowly. I do not wish panic among either species until we see what develops. The journey back through the Dragon City felt surreal. Malik clutched the egg bundle to his chest, hardly believing it was real. Other dragons they passed stared openly, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. A few made threatening gestures that Torres quickly discouraged with sharp warnings. When they finally reached the human settlement, the familiar sights and sounds felt like stepping into another world. The shabby buildings, the smell of cooking food, the sound of children playing in the dusty streets, everything seemed smaller and dimmer after the grandeur of the Dragon Palace. Boy, Torres said as they stopped outside Malik's building. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Dragons and humans don't mix. This will end badly for everyone involved. Maybe, Malik replied, still clutching the egg. But my sister will live to see it. Torres shook his head and walked away, muttering under his breath about foolish humans and their impossible dreams. Malik climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their tiny apartment, his legs shaking with exhaustion and shock. When he pushed open the door, he found his neighbor Jasmine sitting beside Keisha's bed, cooling the little girl's fever with damp cloths. Malik. Jasmine jumped up, relief flooding her face. When you didn't come back last night, I thought the worst. What happened? Did you? She stopped talking when she saw the bundle in his arms. Is that what I think it is? She whispered. Malik nodded, moving to his sister's bedside. Keisha's breathing was shallow and rapid, her small face flushed with fever. But her eyes opened when she heard his voice. Did you find it? She asked weakly. The medicine. Better than that, Malik said, unwrapping the egg carefully. Even in the dim light of their room, it glowed within a fire, warm to the touch and pulsing with life. I found us a future. The egg cracked on a Tuesday morning while Malik was preparing Keisha's breakfast. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with distant thunder, and suddenly their tiny apartment filled with golden light. Malik dropped the bowl he was holding and rushed to the makeshift nest he had built from old blankets and heating coils. A bronze snout poked through the shell, followed by 2 bright golden eyes that seemed far too intelligent for something so small. The dragonling was no bigger than a house cat, her scales gleaming like polished copper. When she saw Malik, she let out a tiny chirp that somehow conveyed both curiosity and demand. Hello there, Malik whispered, reaching out slowly. I'm Malik. The dragonling sniffed his fingers, then bit one gently. Not hard enough to break skin, but firm enough to let him know she was testing him. When he didn't pull away, she climbed onto his palm, her tiny claws tickling his skin. What should we call her? Keisha asked from her bed. The egg essence had worked perfectly, and she was finally strong enough to sit up and watch the hatching. Zara, Malik said without thinking. The name felt right somehow, like it had always belonged to this small creature with the fierce golden eyes. Over the following days, Malik threw himself into learning everything he could about dragon care. He had managed to steal an old datapad from the Dragon archives, and spent hours reading about feeding schedules, growth patterns, and basic dragon physiology. Zara grew rapidly, doubling in size every few days, but she remained small enough to hide under his jacket when they went outside. The bond between them developed faster than Malik had expected. Within a week, he could sense her emotions, her contentment when she was warm and fed, her excitement when she learned something new, her protective fury whenever someone seemed to threaten Keisha. More surprisingly, she seemed to understand his feelings too. When he was worried about money or food, she would curl up against his neck and purr softly until he felt calmer. Teaching her to fly was the hardest part. Dragon instinct told her to spread her wings and leap from high places, but their apartment was on the third floor of a rickety building in the middle of a crowded settlement. One wrong move could expose their secret to hundreds of humans who might panic at the sight of a dragon. Malik solved the problem by taking her to the old mining tunnels outside the settlement late at night. The abandoned shafts were wide enough for her to practice, and deep enough that no one would see the flashes of light from her developing fire breath. "Come on, Zara," he encouraged as she perched on a rock ledge, her wings spread but trembling with uncertainty. "You can do this. Dragons are born to fly." She chirped nervously, looking down at the 20-foot drop to the tunnel floor. "I'll catch you if you fall," Malik promised, knowing it was impossible but meaning it anyway. Zara looked at him for a long moment, then launched herself into the air. Her wing beats were unsteady at first, but she managed to glide in a rough circle before landing gracefully beside him. The pride in her golden eyes was unmistakable. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when they involve dragons. 3 weeks after the hatching, Malik was returning from the market when he spotted Dragon Lord Cain waiting outside their building. Cain was one of Queen Perithia's court nobles, a black dragon known for his rigid adherence to traditional laws. His presence in the human settlement could only mean trouble. Malik slipped through the back entrance and climbed the emergency stairs, his heart pounding. When he reached their floor, he could hear voices through the thin walls. "This arrangement is an insult to our entire species," Cain was saying, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "A human child playing with one of our young as if it were a pet." "The Queen's will is clear," replied Captain Torres, who was apparently also in their apartment. "The boy keeps the hatchling. The Queen is making a mistake that will cost us all dearly." Already there are whispers in the settlement. Other humans are starting to ask questions, wondering why they cannot have what this boy has been given. Malik pressed his ear to the door, trying to hear more. "And what of the dragons?" Cain continued. "My own warriors are questioning my authority. They see this human bonding with one of our young and they wonder if perhaps we have been too generous with this conquered species." "Malik is different," Torres said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "The Queen saw something in him. The Queen saw a desperate child willing to die for his sister. That does not make him worthy of raising a dragon." Through their growing bond, Malik felt Zara's sudden spike of anger from inside the apartment. A moment later, he heard a small roar followed by the sound of something crashing to the floor. The voices stopped abruptly. "It seems," Cain said coldly, "that the hatchling disagrees with me." The alien ships appeared without warning on a quiet Thursday morning. Malik was teaching Zara advanced flight maneuvers in the abandoned tunnels when the emergency sirens began wailing across the settlement. Through their bond, he felt her sudden terror, a primal fear that seemed to come from somewhere deep in dragon genetic memory. They rushed to the surface to find the sky filled with massive crystalline vessels, each one the size of a city block. The ships moved with an unnatural fluidity, their surfaces shifting and changing like living glass. Even from miles away, Malik could feel wrongness radiating from them like heat from a forge. "The Void Swarm," whispered an elderly human woman standing nearby, her face pale with horror. "I thought they were just stories." Malik had heard the legends too. Ancient enemies that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. According to the stories, they had last been seen in this part of the galaxy over 500 years ago. Dragon fighters launched from the royal city, their scales gleaming as they formed traditional attack formations. Malik watched through a pair of borrowed binoculars as they engaged the alien vessels, breathing streams of fire and plasma at the crystalline hulls. The attacks bounced off harmlessly. Worse, the alien ships seemed to learn from each assault. When the dragons tried the same tactics twice, the vessels adapted, their surfaces shifting to deflect the attacks more efficiently. Within an hour, 3 dragon fighters had been shot down, their pilots barely escaping in emergency pods. "They're getting slaughtered up there," Jasmine said, joining Malik on the settlement's observation deck. The dragons don't know how to fight something that changes tactics every few minutes. Malik felt Zara's restless energy through their bond. She was nearly full-grown now, her bronze scales gleaming and her wingspan reaching 12 feet. More importantly, their connection had deepened into something beyond normal dragon bonding. They could share thoughts, emotions, even tactical ideas in real time. "We have to help," he said. "We?" Jasmine stared at him. "Malik, you're not a soldier. You're a kid from the settlement who got lucky." But Zara was already spreading her wings, and Malik could feel her determination matching his own. They had trained together for months, developing fighting techniques that no traditional dragon warrior would ever consider. Where pureblood dragons relied on raw power and ancient formations, Malik and Zara had learned it to be unpredictable. "Stay here with Keisha," he told Jasmine, climbing onto Zara's back. "If we don't come back." "You'll come back," Keisha interrupted from behind them, her 8-year-old face serious but unafraid. "You always do." The flight to the battle zone took 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. As they climbed higher, Malik could see the full scope of the disaster. Dozens of alien ships hung in formation while dragon forces tried desperately to break through their defenses. The crystalline vessels moved like schools of fish, adapting and shifting in perfect coordination. "Okay, girl," Malik whispered to Zara, feeling her muscles tense beneath him. "Let's show them how humans fight." Instead of joining the main dragon formations, they approached from below, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their heat signature, a trick Malik had learned from old mining equipment manuals. The aliens were focused on the obvious threats above, not watching for a single small dragon coming up through their blind spot. Zara struck the first ship with surgical precision, not trying to destroy it but targeting what looked like sensor arrays along its hull. The vessel shuddered and began drifting, suddenly unable to coordinate with its neighbors. Before the other ships could react, Malik guided Zara into a spiraling attack pattern he had designed based on old storm dancing techniques his grandmother had taught him years ago. They wove between the alien vessels like leaves in a hurricane, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted, always hitting weak points and then disappearing again. The key was unpredictability. Where dragon warriors flew in straight lines and breathed fire in steady streams, Malik and Zara moved in chaotic bursts. They would dive straight at a ship, then bank away at the last second. They attacked from above, below, and from angles that made no tactical sense to either species. It worked. The alien formation began to break apart as individual ships lost their coordination. Other dragon fighters, seeing the success of this strange new approach, began copying Malik's tactics. Soon the entire battle had shifted from formal formations to wild, improvised combat. When Queen Perithia herself joined the fight, landing on the command ship's hull and tearing through its crystalline armor with her claws, the remaining aliens retreated into hyperspace. The victory celebration lasted 3 days, but for Malik, the real victory came when Dragon Lord Cain approached him in the royal courtyard. "I was wrong about you," the proud black dragon said simply. "Perhaps humans and dragons together can achieve what neither could alone." Queen Perithia smiled as she watched the first joint training exercises begin a week later. Malik and Zara had become symbols of a new age, proof that strength came not from tradition, but from the courage to try something different. "Tell me, young Malik," she asked as human and dragon cadets practiced together in the sky above them, "what do you think we should call this new partnership?" Malik watched his sister Keisha laughing as a young dragon taught her to read ancient script, then looked up at Zara performing aerial maneuvers with her new dragon squadron. "Family," he said simply. "I think we should call it family."